Hi everyone. This video is designed to help you get through your week 3 project in Excel for doing data analysis and visualization. Here I have a spreadsheet that is similar but different from the spreadsheet that you're given to complete your project. And I will go through this spreadsheet and do all the steps that you are meant to do in your Excel spreadsheet, but again, that is not this spreadsheet, so the answers will be different. The process will be the same. So the first thing you're asked to do is to calculate some descriptive statistics. So they ask you for the mean age. It looks like we're already labeled, and so age should go in the cell that's right below where it says age. This cell is named J2 because it's in the jth column and it's in the second row. This is where they want you to place the average age. So to calculate the average age, that's something that Microsoft Excel can do for you using one of the built-in functions. So to use a built-in function, we highlight the cell by clicking on it, and then we hit the equal sign. And now Excel knows that I want a function. So the name of the mean function is average. And you can see it's most recently used. I can type it in, or I can double click here for it to show up. And then it's looking for me to give it numbers that it wants to average. We want to average the age, so I'm going to come over here and click and drag the ages. Close the parentheses, hit enter, and we get our mean age. They also want to know how many males and how many females, what the gender distribution is. This is going to require using a COUNTIF function. Now I know I'm going quickly here, but you're able to pause this video, rewind, and watch me do it again. So if you feel like I'm going too fast, pause the video, get your bearings, unpause the video, watch what I'm doing, try it yourself, pause the video, repeat. Okay? So we're going to hit equals again because we're creating a function. We're using a function. So we're going to use the COUNTIF function. So what the COUNTIF function does is it takes in two arguments. So arguments are things that are separated by a comma. And you can see it's looking for a range and then comma, what is the criteria? So what the COUNTIF function will do is it will scan the range for the certain criteria that you're looking for, and it will count the number of items that meets the criteria. So the range is going to be the gender column, so we want these cells, C2 through C7, comma, the criteria is I want the word male for this cell. So I'm actually going to click on the cell that has the word male in it and close the parentheses. And it says there are 4 males in this data set, which I can see because there's only 6 data values in here. So I can see that there's 4. Now, the great thing about Excel in using these formulas, the reason we don't want to type them in, instead we want to use formulas instead of just typing numbers into the cells, is because once you have a larger data set, the same process takes the same amount of time for exponentially more data. So we can have a data set that's 6 values or 6,000 values, and it's going to take us the same amount of time to analyze that data because we're using formulas instead of just typing in numbers. So I also want to count the number of females. I can see that there's 2 females, but I'm going to use the formula. Again, we're highlighting C2 through C7, comma, we click on female, and we're done. Now I want to show you a trick that would have made that even faster. I wouldn't have had to retype this formula at all. So if you're not in the mood for tricks, you just want to get this done, then fast forward through this part. But I'm going to delete this calculation that I made, and I'm going to revisit the formula that I have here. Now, in the corner here of my cell, there's this little box, and I can zoom in here. The box got smaller, actually, so that didn't help. But there is this box in the bottom right corner, and that, you can see the cursor changes when I hover over that box. This box is an autofill box. So if I click on this and I drag it to the right, it's going to tell me 0. And the reason it's telling me 0 is look what happened. Okay? So this formula is dealing with the cells in C2 through C7. When I dragged that formula 1 to the right, look what happened. Now it's highlighting cells D2 through D7. I dragged it 1 column to the right, and it moved all the references 1 column to the right. It even changed male, the cell that has male in it, over to the cell that has female in it. Now, that's not helping us for this particular problem because we still want to count the cells that are in C2 through C7. So what we can do is when we created this formula, what we could have done is hit function F4 at both the beginning and the end of our alignment. Notice it puts these dollar signs in front of C, the column letter, and the row number. What that does is it locks the reference to those cells. So now when I autofill and I drag this right, left, down, up, the reference to those cells, C2 through C7, will remain the cells C2 through C7. And what that allows me to do is, if I had been calculating for this for the first time, I could have dragged these cells and then hit F4, and it would have just locked them all right at the beginning, comma, male. Now I can autofill this to the right, and look, the formula is now referencing those same cells, C2 through C7, but now it's checking to see if they're female instead of male, because that got dragged 1 to the right because we did not lock the reference to that cell. So you can do these manually, like I said before and I showed you before, or if you really learn how to take advantage of what Excel can do for you, you can get this done faster. And I'm going to do the same thing for the next portion, because now they want us to count all the patients with each condition. And you can see that these columns follow the same order that these columns follow. And so theoretically, I need to make this formula once for falls, and then if I drag it to the right, it will work for all of the other ones because it's going to move the range 1 to the right each time and actually be referencing these columns, medication errors, MRSA, all of these things are the things that we want to actually track. So the directions that you're given has you create a formula for each one of these. I'm going to say, let's create the formula once. So count if. We want to count the number of falls here. So that's D2 through D7, comma. The criteria is the word being yes. So I'm going to put in quotes the word yes because I don't have a cell to reference that word in. And it's telling me there's 4 people that fell. Happens to be all the males, and we'll talk about the percentage of patients with each condition. And we're going to do a pivot table soon to sort of parse out this data by gender. But falls, there's definitely 4 people that fell. Watch this. I don't have to do the formula for the next 3 columns because this is looking now, it's referencing this column, and so it's counting all the yeses. I have 2 yeses. Here it's counting all the medication errors. I have 2 yeses. Here it's counting all the MSRAs. And so I only had to make the formula once, and it worked for all of the columns, which is great. All right, so next they want us to create a pivot table. So they want us to highlight the entire data set. So we're going to highlight this whole area. And again, to highlight, we want to click and hold the click and drag the mouse to get our selection. We don't want to click one cell and then drag the corner, because this corner is the autofill corner, and it's actually going to delete all of the data. So let's say we were here and we wanted to highlight. Look what happens. It replaces everything with the autofill feature, and so we don't want to do that. Instead, we want to click and drag. So now what we're going to do is we're going to go to the Insert tab here, and our first option is Pivot Table. So we're going to Insert Pivot Table, and we have the range, okay? Where do we want to place the pivot table? It says place the pivot table in a new worksheet. Look at me. I'm not reading directions. So we're going to put it in a new worksheet, okay? And so sheet 2 has been created, and it's looking for our pivot table. So what we're going to do is we want gender falls. We want all of this data here. But what we want is we just want gender to be in the rows, and we want everything else to be in the values. Okay, and we should probably keep these in order. It looks like they are in order of what they were on the sheet. And now that I have 2 variables to kind of like go against, the table is being created in real time. So we have our row labels, which is gender in this case. And so I'm actually going to change this to gender. Okay. We have female, male, and then we have our counts for falls, medication errors, MRSA. All of that is broken down for us. Now what we can do is it's asking us to create a bar chart for the prevalence of falls and all these other variables by gender. And so we can highlight the data in this table, in the middle part of this table, and then we can go to Insert, and here is where we're going to get our bar chart. So in this first 2D column, we want a 2D bar chart or a 3D bar chart. It doesn't specify which bar chart we want. So let's just go ahead with the 2D bar chart. So here we have a bar chart of male and female. We have our values, and we can see how they all fall in. There's a nice legend. Now, typically we would want to put a table and some axis labels on our chart. So on a PC, there will be a plus sign right here, and you can add chart elements right from the chart. Here, I'm going to go to Design, and I'm going to add some chart elements up in the ribbon. So we have our axis titles. I do want a horizontal and a vertical title. I also want a chart title above the chart. Okay, and we want to Medical information by gender would be a nice title to this chart. We want axis titles, so we have gender here. Here we have number of patients. And if you want to like change up the format of this, there's options that are built in along the top, and you can choose the one that speaks to you the most. I really like this one, so I'm going to stick with this one here. All right, in the next part of this, it's asking you to summarize your findings, interpret the results, okay? So the last part of analyzing the data is to find the percentage of patients with each condition. What we're going to do is sort of draw from the information we have over here. We know how many patients fell and had medication errors and MRSA. So we know all of these things about the patients, but it would be helpful to know the total number of patients. So we know it's 6. Again, we can see this is a small data set, and our eyes can look at this and see 6. But if I had a large data set and I didn't want to go through and count all of the things, there is a function that I could use, and that function is called count. We can use patient ID for that count. Now it's asking you to use count A instead of count. Count A if you are wondering what a function does, you can put the function in and then click on it, and a menu will come up that tells you what count A does. So count A function counts the number of cells that are not empty in a range. So count will only count numbers. So if I do count, you'll see the difference. Count function counts cells that contain numerical values. Count A will count any cell that's not blank. So here, because we're using patient ID to identify these patients, we actually don't need count A. We could use count, and that would give me 6. I know there's 6 patients, okay? But that's not the percentage. The percentage is going to be how many of these patients fell divided by count A through A7. And I'm going to lock the reference to that cell range because I do want to be able to copy this formula even though it's not going to work completely. Okay, it's going to tell me 0 because it's dragging down, and so now it's referencing like the cell right below the fall cell where I want it to reference the cell next to the cell that I had before. So what I can do is I can come in here and physically grab this. When you get the hand, you can grab it and move it over, and now I have that percentage, and I can do that for all of them. I can take this cell and move it to where it's supposed to be. I can take this cell and move it to where it's supposed to be over here, and I have all my counts. Now it says in the directions to multiply this by 100 in the formula. Instead, what I'm going to do is I'm going to highlight these cells, and I'm going to change the style of the cell to be a %, and it will give you those percentages. And if you want them to out to more than the whole number, you can add decimals to them. I'm not sure what percentage they want you to round to, but I'm just going to put 2 decimal places and feel good about that. Okay, so now that I have all of my data analyzed, there's some things that you need to do. You need to interpret your results. And then there's more data visualizations that you need to create. So you need to create the pivot table we already did. The bar chart we did from the pivot table. Then it's asking for a pie chart for gender. So we can come over here and highlight our gender data that we analyzed, insert pie chart, and it will create a chart for us, and I can put a chart title and I can add some labels. So you might want to add some data labels either inside or outside of the pie chart. I'm not going to go through that, but you can do it. They also want you to create a line chart for the age distributions. So we can go ahead and go to age and create a line chart by inserting a line chart. Again, we want to add a title that's appropriate and some axis labels here. And then we want to create a stacked column chart for the condition prevalence. Just so that you're aware, in this column chart option, the second one in is a stacked column. So you would use this option once you've highlighted the appropriate data. Okay, well, I hope this was helpful, and there will be another video for the week 6 project that you have available on the Tech Center in My Nightingale. Thank you.